Perhaps you've attended a powwow but had questions about the cultural significance of one. In this segment of Frame, we learn about Native American culture through powwows. Joining me right now is one of our experts, Kelly Montijo Fink, who's an Apache Indian, here to discuss one aspect of a powwow. Thank you for joining me, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Please start with your tribal heritage and your involvement in powwows. So take it away.
I am Chiricahua Apache, and the Apache people are known all over the Southwest, particularly in New Mexico, Arizona, parts of Colorado, and even into Mexico. My native name is White Sparrow, and I think it hasn't been all that long that I've been involved in powwows, within the last 10 to 15 years. And I am a traditional dancer, women's traditional. I dance buckskin, which if you look at one of my album covers, you'll see the traditional, women's traditional buckskin, beaded. And it's significant because the design and the beading reflect my identity as well. My name actually means warrior, so there are arrows on that beading that kind of reflect that name as well. My daughter is also a jingle dancer, and so there are many different types of dances that you'll see, both for the men and women. I can only speak from the women's perspective. But a jingle dancer, the jingle dance is a dance that's done for healing for those who cannot dance. The jingle dancer would dance on their behalf with prayers for their well-being. So behind me we have my daughter's regalia. It's a red top, and most of the time you'll see the jingle dances or the dresses with these jingles on the whole dress. This is kind of the shortened version. They're quite heavy too. But the idea is that when the jingles sound, it's like cleansing rain that comes.
Oh, yes.
And so they do a zigzag motion with their feet that represent the ups and downs and the quick changes of life. And so this is what the typical, or a example of a typical jingle dress might look like. There are certain dances like the stomp dances native to the tribes of Oklahoma, things that you see more in a particular geographic area than you would in another. There are different kinds of powwows. There's social gatherings that are non-competitive. There are competitive powwows where people are competing not only on the drum but in the dance for prize money. You have vendors selling their wares. You have a little bit of everything, but it is a time for people to get to know one another, appreciate each other's cultural expressions and dances.
And you said that you just started becoming involved in them 10 to 15 years ago. What was the turning point? What got you more involved?
For me, it was more embracing my Native identity, and I think we are in a point historically in the United States where people are starting to embrace their heritage and not being afraid or ashamed of that. And for Native people, I think that is a significant thing, to not be ashamed. For the generations that went before me, I'm actually a mix of Apache, Mexican, and Spanish. And on my mother's side, and for them it was bad enough saying you were Mexican, so why would you want to say that you're Indian? And so for me personally, I feel like I'm reclaiming something that was lost and honoring something that should have existed and been passed down, and got a little hiccup along the way.
Sure. What do you think was the cause of that hiccup? Because I have other friends who of Mexican descent and Native American descent, and there's a moment in time where their family was like, well, we don't want to teach you Spanish, for instance. We want you to only learn and speak English.
I have those stories on both sides of the family too, actually, And it's not just indigenous, so to speak, to Native or to Mexican Americans. I think it's cross-cultural, because here in Iowa we have a large German population, and I've heard stories from members of the community who say, at that time after World War II, their families say, tell them we're Dutch, don't tell them we're German. It just depends socially where you are in the food chain in that point in time. And fear has a lot to do with it. If there was oppression, the repercussions of, do you live that way, or do you hide just to protect yourself and your family and your people?
Wow, that's pretty interesting when you think about it, because it seems like we should all just be free to be ourselves, but there are different cultural influences that come into play that prevent people from doing that. Yeah. All right, you are a multidisciplinary artist. You have some of your other work here.
Yes,
Please tell us, you referenced your music, so why don't we start with your music? You are an award-winning musician.
Yeah. And actually my first album and my first series of songs really were drum songs, and I felt like the drum best expressed the heart of who I am, and it was that heartbeat, and that's why the first CD is called Heartbeat of the Creator. It was like my prayers and my heart wanted to reflect that which I was created to be. And so the songs are mostly prayer songs, and they're drum, which I have a hand drum here, and vocals. And one of the things about powwows that you should know is when people would gather historically, they wouldn't necessarily speak the other person's language. There was a lot of sign language, but there's also in music, particularly drum songs, there's what's called vocables. And so when they would get together, they'd sing these vocal sounds like
yes,
the higher register in the north, and the down lower register in the south, in the southern tribes. So that was a way that people could all get together, no matter what their tribe, and sing a song together. So I have some of that, you know, my music incorporates some of the old traditions as well as some more modern sounds. I have, you know, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, those kind of things on my more recent album. And so all those things that I create are really a reflection of all of who I am and all of my interests and all of my giftings, and that comes out through the music.
And are drums a prominent instrument in most powwows?
Absolutely. There are various drum groups that play. If it's a competitive powwow, they're competing for prize money. You'll see representatives of the group along the sidelines trying to sell their CDs as well. If you like what you hear, we really encourage people to purchase the music and support Native artists.
Sure.
Definitely, most definitely. It's one of the oldest instruments on the earth, the drum and the flute.
True. Is there anything else that you can share with us to enlighten people about powwows from a female perspective, with the dances, with the music, with the jewelry?
Sure. I mentioned a little bit about the representation of the jingle dress. The buckskin I didn't talk too much about, but these are the stories that have been passed to me. The women's buckskin represents a woman who walks in wisdom, someone who is seen as reliable, respectable. So there are meanings in everything. Even the way that the woman wearing the buckskin dances is very elegant, very dignified. And so those things, those ideas come through in the dance.
To understand a different tribal perspective as well as the male point of view, joining me is Dan Loudfoot Simonds, who is from the northeast part of the country. Yep. Thank you for joining me on Frame.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. So please share with us your tribal heritage and your background involved in powwows.
I am from the Pequot tribe. My tribe's from Connecticut, southeastern Connecticut. What you see on me here is actually part of my tribal flag. So back east we have a lot of hills and trees. Yeah. And then this is my family's signature, Casa Cinnamon. It's actually now Simonds. Casa Cinnamon is our original name, but they couldn't pronounce that during the church days, so it was changed to Simonds. And then you have our trees, because back east we have a lot of trees, and then our waves for the water. And we're the fox people. So this is actually an item that I dance with when I'm dancing. It's a fox fur. Back east we're the fox people. That's just what we're known as. So a lot of people in my tribe wear foxes on their outfits. This is an eagle fan. We also do dance with eagle fans, hawk fans. We also have feathers that adorn our hair. These are clubs that I dance with. This is called a ball-headed club, and you'll find these back east primarily. This is a typical design, and on the end we also have a fox.
Oh yes, hand-carved?
Yep, this is all hand-carved here. And then this is an axe I dance with. This has again, the hill motif that's on my flag, and then you hold it that way, and it's also the waves.
Oh.
So it's both, designs.
Everything's hand-carved. Now, are these items that are created for you to dance with throughout your life, and are they? Yeah,
these are items that I've made. Usually, people either, like you said, get them handed down or make them. Things with outfits, like buckskin. The buckskin that I wear, it has a lifespan. It won't last forever. Sure. So every 5 to 10 years, you have to make new outfits because they'll get, especially moccasins will only last one season if you dance a lot.
Yeah.
So you'll get holes in your moccasins. You'll have to get new moccasins. This is a bag. This isn't mine, but this is an example of like what a woman would wear. This is actually Oneida beadwork. Oneida is part of Six Nations. Six Nations is many tribes, but Oneida is one of them. And this is just the typical beadwork that you'll see. It's called raised beadwork. So this is actually beads
Really
on top of each other. So it's their specific style. They use a lot of velvet. You also see velvet on the outfits too. Men and women, women dancers.
This is gorgeous.
And back home we have wampum belts. These belts were actually America's first books and held our treaties. So if you look at this, this is a story belt. So this is the coast. The line is our coast. This is the cross, Christianity coming to the coast, and then the circles stand for the people, and the cross kind of infiltrating the people. So this is just an example of a story belt. But also, like I said, these were also our treaty belts, so they kind of held government policies and that sort of thing. And wampum is something I do now. So these are shells we get from back home. From all the way from North Carolina up to Maine is where you find the quahog. It's called a quahog shell. It's a type of clam. So we dig for these back home, and then we actually eat them. And then after we're done eating them, we save the shells and make jewelry. So things like this is an example of a bracelet.
Pretty.
Like all these beads I hand carve. I actually do it right in back here in my backyard.
Amazing.
And then these are some earrings that I do here, but just kind of examples of traditional jewelry that we wear back home. In the Southwest, you'll find a lot of turquoise, but if you go to a New England powwow, this is all you'll see is the shell work.
Oh, fascinating.
So shells is what we have back home because it's what we have.
It's indigenous to the earth in your region. This is beautiful. I've never ever seen shells like this, and I love your jewelry. About the symbology of the feathers, because I love the regalia of powwows, and the feathers are something that just really.
Feathers are actually something that basically warriors are supposed to get. Now it's different because we're in modern times, but traditionally the eagle feathers were things that were handed down to warriors in the tribe. But now, pretty much just family members give you eagle feathers to dance, and also as I said, hawk feathers. I actually, living in Iowa, I found 2 hawks on the side of the highway 80 here, so I've been lucky to get 2 hawks. These feathers are actually eagle, but I also have hawk feathers in my hair when I'm dancing.
Well, this has been a complete honor. Thank you so much, Kelly and Dan. Hopefully everyone will have a beginning understanding of the Native American culture through your expertise and through your eyes. And thank you for tuning in to this segment of Frame. What images come to your mind when you think about Russian culture? Perhaps it's their colorful and extravagant architecture, or their passionate, intense dancers, or maybe their vibrant music. Of course, there's far more to Russian culture than just a few of these items, but in this segment of Frame, we learn a little bit more about it. Joining me is the Artistic Director for the International Academy for Russian Music, Art, and Culture, Oleg Timofeyev. Oleg, thank you so much and welcome to Frame.
Hello, it's a great pleasure to be here. When you think of Russian culture, the guitar is probably the last thing you would think. You immediately think of guitars when you think Spain.
True.
But with Russia, you have this triangular balalaika. Maybe some people know, maybe some people have seen it in Dr. Zhivago, the long movie, the old one, and it ends and starts with the balalaika because that's the symbol of Russia. However, very few people know that in the 19th century and partially in the 18th century, Russia had its own guitar tradition, and to promote that, at some point we started the Academy of Russian Music here in Iowa City. Started doing music on my own, first kind of guided by my mother, then taking lessons from a very charismatic guitar teacher, Kamil Frauchi. But he was a charismatic, very strong, very interesting teacher, and he just gave me that love for music, like seriousness with which I studied every note. And with that, after partying with him, I started studying early music, which was lute, Renaissance. At that time, the last thing I was thinking was Russian music or anything Russian. Russian culture was pressed on us so hard. It was so much part of Soviet propaganda that I wanted to be not associated with it, and I was very interested in everything foreign, Western, Renaissance, far away, and that precisely what brought me to the West. My first trip abroad happened in 1989 here to Iowa City, because a local musicologist found either my work interesting or my person charming or something between, or combination of both. But I ended up at the University of Iowa as artist in residence, and as I was kind of more and more living here and just understanding who I really am, Russianness became more and more important to me. Russian culture became very important at both universities. I took some classes in Russian literature that gave me a completely different angle at my own culture, and at the end I chose the Russian topic for my dissertation, and that topic was the Russian guitar, which is a completely different instrument, having 7 main strings. Just sort of a little demonstration with a concrete song.
Okay.
Well, the main thing about the Russian guitar is that it's tuned to a chord. So if you come to any guitar, 6-string guitar, and if you strum all the strings, they don't sound very sonorously, they don't sound like a chord. Here's a song that I'll just play the beginning. Sorry. This is called God Save the Tsar. It was the official Russian anthem. And it is used in Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture, and therefore many Americans know it. In fact, more Americans than Russians, because of the usage of this. This was a forbidden tune during the Soviet times. So because of that, the overture was rarely performed. Of course,
I studied the flute growing up, play the piano a little bit. Are there any differences between the composition of notes as they're played here?
Well, there's no major differences, except that Russian guitarists created a very unique way of notating fingering, which was when you see something like 7/5, 7/3, it means that you're playing a third finger on the 7th fret. So when you see it, but since you know the note, you can figure out on what string. So a lot of music is very heavily fingered. The Russian guitarists used their thumb like that, which is only used on rock and roll guitar. Like classical guitarists don't use it. Well, otherwise there's no use for the thumb at all. And there's a sign for that. Sometimes you encounter it in music.
Any other differences?
Not really, no.
The sheet music?
No, the sheet
American
music is the
and
same.
Russian
Yeah, the sheet music is the same. It's just the textures of the song.
What about this top?
Well, those are you use occasionally for the. Here's an example of a Russian song, and you can hear peculiarity of the Russian guitar. Maybe here. it's a very unique kind of mode of expression. You know, we had two main types of songs, the dragging songs and the dance songs. So this is a dragging song. There is nothing like that in, you know, non-Slavic folklore, and I don't even think that every Slavic nation has something like that. The song that has no clear shape, it's completely ad libitum, kind of very free. And you know, it's probably associated with our endless steppes and, you know, long roads. It was typical for a coachman to sing. The whole nation was was a very singing nation.
Fascinating.
It's by famous Russian maker Robert Arhusin, who was of Danish lineage. Actually, he wasn't Russian. His father came from Denmark. Was a very good guitar maker. This is, again, this guitar shows this whole history of Russian culture in a sense of a lot of borrowings. It follows the example of Viennese guitar making. In Vienna, they were making guitars with two necks. At that time, a popular kind of music in Vienna was called Schrammelmusik. And they played music with two violins, clarinet, and guitar. And guitar was playing those basses, like as some sort of accompaniment.
Fascinating.
And they had even more basses. So therefore, all the guitars were made with two necks from that point. The fingerboard is completely flat here. It's not like that early guitar. It still has some really unique features, like the double back. It was believed that with his belly, the guitarist kind of makes the sound dull, and so they just made another back.
Oh, I see. One's on top of the other.
Yeah, so you can take it off. There will be still something left.
I'm going to learn how to play the 7-string guitar.
That's
well, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, would you like to
We
try?
can't. Well, sure. I can try anything on this show. Where do I start?
Well, the thing is, you don't need to do anything.
Oh, it's just so harmonious.
Exactly.
Instantly. This could be a possibility. What else can I do? How do I?
That's always pretty good.
Yay! How about I have you take us out? You're beautiful playing. We'll end the show with you playing. Thanks for tuning into Frame. Bravo! It's no secret that the art world is filled with the cast of characters, and my next guest is no exception. He's a self-described firecracker. He's Iranian-born, Iowan by choice, and creates exquisite Islamic art on his Amish farm. In this segment of Frame, the world-renowned Jafar Mogadam is joining me to teach us about Islamic art. Welcome to Frame. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
In today's environment, politically, economically, and culturally, it's still clear to me that there's so much confusion and
Exactly.
misunderstanding between cultures.
Exactly.
I'm dedicating this show to helping others to understand about various cultures, and I think one very important right now is the Muslim community and understanding the Islamic world.
Exactly.
And so I'm asking you to guide us through this discussion, to educate us so that we can gain more
wonderful.
understanding.
Sure. Well, we can start with describing in very brief, a very general term, Islamic civilization. What combines, make the Islamic civilization of course, is the people that make the civilization. And what is so unique about this civilization that is called Islamic? Well, as you mentioned, is the religion of Islam that combine all these variations of societies, governments, countries in a more uniform concept and coherence. Now, like any other religion, they need a place to worship. And very early in Islam, since Muslims did not have any architectural form of their own, they came to be and witnessing the need for a unique form of architecture that would be different from others and especially be tailored for the Muslims that need to be pray, as you mentioned, 5 times a day. They needed to build mosque would satisfy their people's need.
All right.
So that's how the foundation of mosque began. Mosque, which is the basic and the most characteristic of Islamic architecture. And there are 4 kinds, but this one, as you can see here, is called a Friday mosque because it has to take several thousand people to prayer. I spent about 6 months painting this. Some of it is very, very factual. The basic of the dome is a very fundamental. The very unique form of Islamic architecture is this rectangular,
Yes.
and then this Roman arch at the center. You also have this, which is called minarets. I read that this was taken from Christian bell towers. This unique form is for muazzin, or the person that goes up here 5 times a day and call the people to prayer.
Understand.
And Islam kept these characteristics. So there are 3 bays here.
3 rectangles.
And then when the prayer is going to start, this door opens up, you go inside. The opposite wall is the most important part of a mosque because that wall is directionally situated that faces Mecca.
Okay. In every mosque.
Every mosque. And at the center of that wall, which is called Qibla wall, there is a niche, blind niche, that's called mihrab.
Mihrab.
Mihrab. Right in front of that mihrab, which is opposite of this entrance wall,
Yes.
the imam stands up and celebrates the prayers, and everyone else line up behind him. As you can see, there is no shading. Islamic art is very flat, very abstract. The only way you can sense and feel the space is by the way I use the colors. As you can see, lighter colors, darker colors. Now, is everything here real? No, of course not. There are certain elements of idealism.
Such
The
as?
beautiful landscape on the background, as you can see,
are beautiful.
there's all added up. The tiled pond, ablution pond, is added up.
What does that mean? Abolition.
Ablution fountain is a very essential in any mosque. Every prayer that goes inside have to wash symbolically pure himself.
Yes.
Washes his hand, washes his foot, washes his front forehead before he goes inside.
Understand. Okay.
And that has to be a running water.
Okay.
It's called ablution fountain. And of course, I decided to have this beautiful tiled pond.
It's
And in no way you can see any tiled back or courtyard. This is also added up.
okay.
So it's according to my taste, when I wanted to gather this, but these are all essential. Now, as you can see, there is calligraphic reproduction of Quran here, here,
And then over here.
and also there. There might be other places as well, but anybody that goes in there can look up and read the writing, which is extracted from the Quran, on the benefits of prayer and paying attention to his religious thought and actions on both attributes. Basically, this is what constitutes an Islamic architecture.
Okay.
Now, there are variations of it. There are different materials that are used in different countries. But there is no way any of them can have a sculpture inside. There's no painting of any deities inside any of these mosques. And they are all horizontally and vertically are related to one point, and that is Mecca in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you so
You're
much.
quite
I
welcome.
appreciate
Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into Frame. Frame is sponsored by Allegra, Click Marketing Solutions, Style Folio Jewelry,